Raiden first set foot in the night market of Aurelian with the sole intention of earning enough credits to clear his debts. People called him a freelancer, though the word was just a polite way of saying mercenary. He wore a battered leather jacket over a set of light armor plates, his dark hair pulled back to reveal a faint scar slanting across his brow. At his side was a long, cloth-wrapped object no one ever asked about. Everyone knew that in these sectors, you minded your own business if you wanted to survive. He drifted between stalls illuminated by neon signs and the glow of bioluminescent creatures, ignoring the shouts of vendors hawking dried kelp chips, spiced starfruit, or black market artifacts. The smell of cooking oil fought with the tang of ozone from hovering signboards. Somewhere deep in his jacket pocket, he carried a coded microchip that he hoped to sell. It was rumored to contain schematics for an advanced star drive, or perhaps it was just another worthless hunk of data. It hardly mattered. If he could unload it for a decent price, he would pay off a portion of what he owed a certain loan shark on Zeros Prime. At a narrow intersection, he paused. A group of reptilian traders hissed at one another as they exchanged goods. And to his right, a pair of drunken thugs seemed to be looking for trouble. Raiden eased his grip around the cloth-wrapped weapon at his hip, but kept walking. He had no interest in scuffles tonight. "It's never that simple," came a voice in his mind. Raiden inhaled slowly. "I know," he murmured under his breath. The voice belonged to Trident, the ancient, sentient weapon concealed beneath the cloth. Trident was a relic from a forgotten civilization, and Raiden had discovered it years ago in the ruins of a deserted temple on an ice planet. Since then, Trident had been his advisor, companion, and sometimes his most aggravating critic. Raiden would have pawned it 100 times if it weren't for the fact that it refused to be sold. More than once, some would-be buyer had tried to walk away with it, only to find that the cloth-wrapped artifact weighed 1,000 pounds or simply vanished from their hold. "Fancy crowd," Trident said. "I wonder if the data chip is even real this time." "It's real enough," Raiden murmured. He was about to step past a stall selling luminous fish scales when the world before him erupted into shouting. A figure barreled into him so quickly that he nearly lost his footing. It was a woman wearing a fitted black and silver bodysuit, her pale violet hair streaming behind her as she sprinted through the market. She glanced back over her shoulder, her face tense. Before Raiden could move aside, she nearly crashed into him. He recognized the panic in her eyes. Someone was chasing her, someone deadly. As though answering that observation, a trio of armed pursuers burst into the clearing. "Stop her!" shouted one of them. Raiden just stood there, reflexes poised on a knife's edge. Instinct told him to keep out of it, that it was none of his business. Then the woman stumbled. A bolt of red energy from her pursuers streaked past her and scorched a nearby stall. Screams cut through the clamor of the market. The violet-haired woman looked around desperately, then locked eyes with Raiden as though he were her last hope. He hated that look. It reminded him too much of his own past, of how he'd once silently begged strangers for help in a far more hostile place. "Don't do it," Trident warned. Raiden shifted his weight. "We can't let them gun her down in the middle of—" The words were barely out of his mouth before the nearest pursuer aimed an energy rifle at her. Cursing under his breath, Raiden tightened his grip on the cloth bundle. One swift motion, and the binding fell away, revealing an elongated metallic rod that radiated a faint blue aura. "That's it," said Trident with mock resignation. Always the hero. Raiden lunged forward, the rod in his hand gleaming with cold light. In a single arc, he knocked the rifle aside before the shooter could react. The second pursuer fired off a shot that Raiden deflected with a deft parry. Energy crackled across Trident's surface, then dissipated. People in the surrounding stalls fled in chaos, overturning crates and screaming as they went. Under normal circumstances, security droids would have intervened, but the night market was notorious for its bribes and selective enforcement. A fierce skirmish erupted. Raiden took the first attacker down with a blow to the back of the head, pivoted, then whipped Trident into the second man's midsection. The third pursuer, apparently the leader, brought up a short-range sonic device that hummed ominously. Raiden's stance faltered momentarily under the assault, as though the air around him vibrated with crushing force. But Trident pulsed in response, sending a wave of neutralizing energy through Raiden's arms and out into the air, disrupting the sonic field. The leader's eyes widened in surprise. Before he could adjust, Raiden dashed forward, delivering a precise strike to the man's jaw. The attacker slumped. Silence settled on the clearing as the violet-haired woman stood, breathing hard. She took a hesitant step toward Raiden. Up close, he noticed two triangular marks just beneath her eyes, something typical of Aurelian royalty or noble families. "Thank you," she said, voice trembling. He shrugged. "Seemed like you needed help." People around them were still in a panic, but the gunfire had ceased, and the pursuers lay sprawled on the ground. Raiden wondered if he should just walk away now. The last thing he needed was more trouble. Then the woman looked at him with a mixture of relief and urgency. "I have a proposition for you," she said, breathless. "I'm Selena, Princess of Asterion. You might have heard of us." Raiden had. Asterion was a kingdom on the southern continent, known for its matriarchal monarchy and rumor of abundant crystal deposits that modern corporations hungered to exploit. "And you are?" Selena pressed. "Raiden," he answered, too wary to elaborate on his surname or origin. She nodded, as though memorizing that one name. "Raiden, you saved my life. Now, I need one more favor." Raiden tensed. "I don't do personal security gigs." "This is bigger than me," Selena replied. "I'm being hunted by a corporate power called Zentech. They want to seize Asterion's resources and force us into a puppet regime. Their assassins have been after me for weeks, and there's someone high up, who intends to wipe out my sisters and me before we can secure our rightful inheritance." "That all sounds complicated," Raiden said. "And you want me to do what?" Her expression was grim but determined. "Marry me." He blinked. "Excuse me. I know it sounds insane." Selena hurried on, her cheeks flushing the faintest shade of lavender. "But there's an ancient royal decree in Asterion. If a princess is to ascend the throne or maintain a certain level of authority, she must be wed to a recognized consort. More than that, if one princess marries, all unmarried sisters are included by default, so no single heir can be manipulated separately. It's an old tradition meant to prevent political battles among siblings." Raiden stared. "You're joking." "She's not," came Trident's voice in his head, though no one else could hear it. Selena glanced anxiously at the unconscious attackers. "I'm not joking. I know you don't owe me anything, and I can pay you. But if I don't secure a consort soon, the Council will invalidate my claim and leave Asterion vulnerable to Zentech's corporate takeover." Raiden rubbed his temples. He had run into all sorts of unusual laws in his travels. Planets where men were forbidden from stepping on farmland, or stations where marriage was sealed by a neural link, but an arrangement that demanded the husband marry every unmarried princess at once was a new one. He knew what he should say now. Turn around, vanish into the crowd, find a buyer for the microchip, and leave. Yet the look in Selena's eyes was too familiar. She was desperate and frightened, the same way he'd once been. "Trident," Raiden muttered, "remind me never to stroll through the night market again." But out loud, he said, "Let's go somewhere safer. We can talk." Selena gave him a shaky smile. "Thank you." They left the unconscious attackers in the care, or lack thereof, of the night markets and scrupulous medics and hurried down a side passage. Selena led him toward a hidden docking station that connected to a small shuttle with Asterion's royal crest etched on its hull. By the time the vessel lifted off, Raiden realized how drastically his life was about to change. When they broke through the cloudy atmosphere and soared over the patchwork of cityscapes, Selena offered him a seat in the shuttle's lounge. The interior was lavish by Raiden standards: plush couches, silver-plated panels, a small but elegant bar. She poured 2 glasses of a pale blue drink that smelled faintly of citrus. "Drink," she urged. "You'll need it." He took a cautious sip and nearly choked at the sharp sweetness. Meanwhile, Selena tried to compose herself, smoothing out the wrinkles in her bodysuit. "Zentech has men everywhere," she began. "Our intelligence suggests they've been infiltrating local governments, bribing officials. They want control of Asterion's crystal fields, some of the richest in this system. With those crystals, they can power starships, weapons, or even entire off-world colonies. Raiden watched her, trying to gauge how much was truth and how much was a desperate sales pitch. And what exactly does your marriage proposal have to do with stopping them? She pursed her lips. Once I have a recognized consort, I can officially assume a stronger role in ruling Asterion alongside my sisters. The law states that if at least one of us marries, then the sisters collectively form a single ruling unit, along with the husband. Our monarchy is matriarchal by tradition, but ironically we still need a male partner to ratify certain treaties or administrative powers before the Interplanetary Council. It's archaic, yes, but it's the only way to secure legitimacy in the eyes of the galaxy's bureaucracies. Raiden stared at the swirling liquid in his glass. And your sisters? You mentioned them. Selena flushed a deeper violet. Yes, well, Azura and Freya. They're my older and younger sisters, respectively. Both are unmarried. By Asterion's custom, if one sister marries, the new consort is automatically bound to all sisters who remain unattached. It's not as scandalous on our world as it sounds to outsiders, I promise. Married to 3 princesses, Raiden said, half to himself. That's ridiculous. Selena half laughed, half groaned. I told you it sounds insane, but it's our tradition and the only way to ensure unity of the royal line. If we don't comply, the monarchy is considered incomplete, giving corporations like Zentech leverage to dispute our rule. A silence stretched between them. Outside the shuttle window, streaks of light from passing aircraft lit the evening sky. So, Raiden said at last, you want me, a random mercenary, to be that consort. You saved me from those assassins, Selena said quietly. I didn't have time to be picky, and you handled yourself like an elite soldier. If I have to choose someone, I'd rather it be you. Trident's mental voice intruded upon Raiden's thoughts. Oh yes, marry 3 princesses, live in a palace, eat lavish meals. Sounds absolutely terrible. Raiden glowered at nothing. What's your angle? He murmured aloud, though Selena presumably thought he was talking to her. She spread her hands. I have no hidden agenda other than survival and protecting my people. Zentech's aggression grows by the day. They might even buy out the Interplanetary Council's vote, unless we can assert our royal rights. I'm prepared to compensate you generously, wealth, positions, or whatever it takes. Raiden sighed. The weight of her words, combined with that memory of seeing her so terrified, tugged at him. He remembered the times he had prayed for someone to save him in similarly hopeless situations, and how rarely it had happened. All right, he said at last. I'll hear you out. No promises yet. Selena exhaled in relief. That's more than enough for now. Within hours, they arrived at Asterion's capital in a swirl of bright city lights. The planet boasted a long history of monarchy, with a culture blending advanced technology and ceremonial tradition. Tall spires of shimmering metal rose alongside organic towers grown from local plant structures. Ancient runes decorated the thoroughfares, while sky bridges connected districts high above the ground. Selena's shuttle descended onto a broad landing pad at the edge of the royal district. Guards in polished armor stood at attention. Their uniforms were a fusion of practical ballistic plating and stylized crests. The moment the ramp lowered, 2 columns of these guards marched forward, halberds humming with integrated energy projectors. Raiden stepped onto the pad, scanning for threats out of habit. Selena followed, brushing a hand through her violet hair to regain composure. The guards recognized her and saluted, but their eyes lingered warily on the man at her side. This is Raiden, Selena announced. He's under my protection. Let us pass. One guard, an older man with a scar across his jaw, frowned. Your Highness, we've had strict orders from Captain Wrist. No outsiders admitted without thorough checks. Selena folded her arms. Then check him, but do it quickly. We don't have time for pointless bureaucracy. Grudgingly, the guards raised scanning devices. A wave of blue light passed over Raiden from head to toe. Trident remained wrapped, but it resisted the scanning frequencies, one of its many hidden talents. The scanners reported unknown reading rather than weapon, so the guards merely exchanged a confused look, then gestured for them to move on. Within the palace walls, the architecture changed to a grandiose style that nearly stole Raiden's breath. Polished floors of black marble veined with gold, overhead chandeliers made of floating crystals that rearranged themselves into new patterns every few seconds, walls adorned with tapestries depicting Asterion's queens from centuries past. A set of ornate double doors swung open to reveal a receiving hall. Two figures waited there, one with bright silver hair cropped short, the other with dark sapphire locks cascading down her back. Even without introduction, Raiden knew these must be Selena's sisters. The silver-haired one stepped forward first, eyes of the palest blue scanning Raiden with open suspicion. She wore sleek, dark armor plating around her shoulders and arms, along with a sword strapped at her hip. "Selena," she said, her tone clipped. "Who is this man, and why did you bring him into the palace without clearance?" Selena forced a smile. "Azura, please. This is Raiden. He saved my life earlier, and he might be the solution to our problem." Azura's gaze narrowed. "You don't mean—" "Exactly." A pause. Then Azura turned that frosty stare on Raiden. "You're the human she wants to marry?" Raiden lifted an eyebrow. "I never said I was fully on board. But yes, apparently that's the idea." For a split second, Azura looked ready to toss him out a window. Then she beckoned. "Follow me." They walked deeper into the palace, passing gilded corridors and halls with stained glass windows that depicted legendary battles. Raiden noticed a contingent of more guards trailing them at a respectful distance, eyeing him warily. At last, they reached a smaller chamber lined with star maps and sets of old ceremonial weapons. Seated on an ivory settee was the third sister, the one with sapphire hair. She was reading from a glassy tablet, her features thoughtful and her eyes a faint shade of lilac. She looked up as they entered. "So you brought home a mercenary," she said softly, though there was a playful note in her voice. "You have a knack for dramatic rescues, Selena." Selena made a face. "Freya, please stop teasing." Freya stood and approached Raiden, circling him once. She smiled with curiosity. You're definitely not from around here. I sense conflict in you and a lot of secrets." Raiden shifted uncomfortably. Something in her tone suggested she had mental or empathic abilities, which was not uncommon among certain Aurelian bloodlines. He decided not to comment. Azura cut in. "Selena claims Zentech's assassins cornered her in the night market, and this man saved her. She believes making him consort will help secure our monarchy. What say you, Freya?" Freya's smile turned wistful. If he saved Selena, that's already a strong point in his favor. But has he agreed to the entire arrangement? Raiden found himself the focus of three intense gazes. He recalled Selena's frantic explanation. If he married one, he was bound to all. "I need to know more," he said carefully, "such as who exactly is after you and how big a risk I'm taking by staying here." Azura folded her arms over her chest. "You be risking your life, obviously. Zentech is a corporate giant with deep pockets. They've tried bribery, infiltration, sabotage. Now, they've escalated to outright assassination attempts." Freya touched Raiden's arm lightly, which startled him. "Azura is correct. The threat is severe. My empathic sense picks up that you're torn about helping us. But if you do, we can offer you safety from your own pursuers, wealth to settle your debts, and a home you might come to value, if you choose." Raiden swallowed. He wasn't sure how she knew about his debts, but then again, telepathy or empathy could reveal quite a bit. He glanced at Selena. "All right," he said. "I won't run, but I'm not promising marriage. Let's handle this threat first, then talk about the formalities." Azura gave a short nod. "Fair enough. We need to talk strategy anyway." As the hours passed, Raiden found himself pulled into an exhausting cycle of meetings and briefings. Palace attendants escorted him through hidden hallways, past glowing murals, and into the war room, where the princesses kept intelligence reports on Zentech's movements. A labyrinth of data scrolled across holographic screens, records of shipments, suspicious financial transactions, black market arms deals. Raiden picked up bits and pieces of the political puzzle. Zentech had the ear of certain interplanetary council members who were pressuring Asterion to liberalize its crystal exports. The monarchy had grown more reclusive after the queen fell ill, and each princess was seen as a separate potential ruler, fracturing the monarchy's authority. That fracturing was precisely the reason behind the old law that forced them all to share a single consort. Ridiculous tradition, Raiden muttered when he was finally alone for a moment. You know you like it, Trident teased in his mind. 3 princesses. Could be worse. Shut up. He was so busy fending off Trident's jabs that he didn't notice someone entering the corridor behind him until a blade was at his throat. Quick reflexes made him jerk his head back, and he raised Trident to deflect. Steel clashed. It was Azura, her silver hair catching the light. She pressed forward, eyes cold. I need to see what you can really do, she said, voice as hard as her blade. If you're going to be part of this family, if that ever happens, you'd better prove you can protect us. A spark of anger flared in Raiden's chest. He shoved her weapon aside with a twist of Trident. She advanced again, footwork swift and sure. They exchanged a rapid series of blows, metal screeching against metal. Raiden marveled at her skill. She was no pampered noble, but a trained warrior. He caught her sword with Trident's haft, then pivoted. Around to attempt to disarm. Azura slid out of his reach, eyes narrowing as she assessed him. A sudden feint on her part forced him back, and he almost stumbled. She seized that moment to press the tip of her blade against his rib cage. Yield, she hissed. Raiden exhaled. With a flick of his wrist, he directed a burst of energy from Trident that momentarily numbed her sword hand. Azura's blade wavered, and he twisted aside, bringing Trident around to tap the back of her neck. They stood locked in that stalemate. Her blade near his torso, his staff near her neck. A bead of sweat trickled down Azura's temple. Then she broke into a grin, surprising him. Good enough, she said, lowering her weapon. Raiden lowered Trident as well. He fought the urge to snap something sarcastic. Azura nodded in approval, sheathed her sword, then walked away without another word. Over the next few days, tension in the palace only grew. Raiden learned that the queen, mother to Selena, Azura, and Freya, was bedridden in a sealed medical wing, too weak to conduct affairs of state. The royal advisors were divided. Some believed marrying an off-worlder would be Asterion's downfall. Others said it was the only solution to unify the sisters against Zentech's aggression. Freya proved the friendliest sister, often bringing Raiden tea or small gifts of local fruit. She spoke to him in a soft voice about the burden they all carried. He tried not to get too comfortable. He had no illusions that life in the palace would remain cozy once Zentech struck again. Sure enough, one night, Raiden awoke to alarms blaring through the corridors. He leapt out of bed, grabbing Trident on instinct. The mental link flared. Trident had sensed unauthorized intruders. Dashing into the hallway, Raiden collided with Selena, who was wide-eyed in her nightclothes. They're here, she gasped, clinging to his arm. Get behind me, he ordered, already scanning for the threat. A team of black-clad commandos rushed around the corner, brandishing high-tech rifles. Their visors glowed a sickly green in the dim lighting. The lead soldier fired. Raiden swung Trident, creating a shield-like barrier that deflected the energy bolts, scattering them across the walls in showers of sparks. Selena darted to the nearest console, pressing her hand against a biometric panel. Security lockdown engaged, she hissed. Azura and Freya should be heading to the safe room, but I don't know if they can reach it in time. Raiden advanced on the commandos. A volley of bolts hammered his barrier, but Trident absorbed or diverted each shot. The staff glowed with mounting energy, ready to discharge. Raiden spun it in a wide arc, unleashing a wave that knocked 3 soldiers off their feet. Another 2 fired grappling lines that latched onto the palace ceiling, trying to gain a vantage. I've got them, Selena said, stepping forward with a small sidearm. She fired at the grappling lines, severing them. The soldiers crashed back to the floor. Raiden, moving swiftly, stunned them with a combination of strikes from Trident. Down another corridor, more blasts echoed. Raiden cursed. Azura might be fighting them alone. Go, Selena said. I'll stay here and try to seal the east wing. He hesitated. Are you sure? She gave him a determined look. I'm not a helpless princess, Raiden. Trusting her words, he sprinted toward the sound of clashing metal. Rounding a corner, he almost crashed into Freya. She was panting, eyes full of worry. Azure is dueling their leader in the Great Hall, Freya said. I tried to help, but they had a psychic dampener blocking my telepathic sense. Raiden nodded. Stay back. Let's see what we can do. Together, they rushed into the Great Hall. Azura was locked in combat with a tall figure wearing advanced body armor and wielding a sword made of some gleaming alloy that sizzled with integrated plasma. Their blades clanged, sending sparks across the polished floor. Several unconscious guards and intruders lay scattered. Raiden could sense how outmatched Azura was in terms of raw power. He lunged in, raising trident to parry a blow aimed at Azura's shoulder. The impact jarred his arms. The armored figure let out a low chuckle. So this is the famed potential consort. The voice was distorted by a helmet modulator. Zen Tech offers quite a bounty for your head, Merc. Raiden smirked. Huh, looks like I'm more popular than I realized. Azura seized the opening to strike at the intruder's side, but they whirled and blocked. The intruder unleashed a concussive blast that sent Azura crashing into a pillar. Freya gasped and rushed to her sister's side, trying to revive her. Raiden gritted his teeth. Trident, let's do this. As if in answer, the staff glowed, channeling energy that vibrated through Raiden's body. He swung at the intruder. Plasma from the enemy's blade crackled, colliding with Trident's aura. Energy crackled wildly, scorching patterns into the marble floor. The intruder pressed forward, too strong to be easily overpowered. Raiden adjusted his stance, feinting to the left, then hooking his staff low. He managed to trip the intruder, who staggered. Azura, regaining her footing, flanked them with a savage slash. Her sword bit into the enemy's armor. A hiss of pain escaped from behind the modulated helmet. The intruder shoved Azura back with an armored elbow, tried to raise the sword again, but Raiden took advantage of the moment to slam Trident down onto the intruder's helmet. Sparks erupted. The figure collapsed, the visor shattering to reveal an ordinary human face twisted in anger. You'll regret this, the man spat, half delirious. Zentek isn't done. Then he lost consciousness. Freya rushed over, eyes full of tears as she helped Azura stand. Azura's lip bled, but she stayed upright. I'm fine, she muttered. What about the rest of them? They're either down or retreating, Raiden answered. Selena's sealed off the east wing. Sure enough, palace security finally swarmed the halls in force, capturing stragglers. Only now did it feel as though the immediate threat was over. The sisters exchanged a weary, relieved look. In the following days, the infiltration attempt caused an uproar. Some advisors demanded the princesses escalate their defenses, even consider a full-scale war with Zentek. But Freya, the calmer voice, insisted they try to gather more evidence and present it to the Interplanetary Council. Selena argued that they had to finalize the consort arrangement before that hearing. Raiden was pulled aside every other hour, asked to confirm details of the assault or to test more advanced security protocols. He also found himself receiving more attention from each princess. Selena occasionally dropping by with heartfelt gratitude, Azura apologizing in her brusque manner for nearly stabbing him in the corridor, Freya offering him small glimpses of her empathic wisdom. One quiet afternoon, Raiden retreated to a balcony overlooking the capital city. A swirl of air traffic glided between the tall spires, and the late sun drenched everything in soft gold. He closed his eyes, hoping for a moment's peace. Enjoying the view, came a gentle voice. He turned to see Selena stepping onto the balcony. She wore a flowing gown of pale lavender, embroidered with starlight patterns. A slight bruise along her jaw hinted at how close the recent battle had been. It's impressive, Raiden admitted, gazing out at the city. I never had much time for scenic vistas. Selena joined him at the balustrade. I spoke to the palace medics. They say you have a few bruises you haven't treated. He shrugged. Nothing serious. You're stubborn, she said softly, a faint smile on her lips. I see how you push everyone away. Even me. Why? Raiden hesitated. I've never belonged anywhere. I've traveled from planet to station, station to planet, picking up odd jobs, fighting to survive. Attaching myself to a monarchy, it isn't exactly my style. Selena nodded. I understand. But maybe that could change. He didn't respond, but he sensed the sincerity in her words. That night, the castle prepared a formal announcement to the people. The three princesses would attend a session of the Interplanetary Council in a few days, where they intended to present evidence of Zentek's crimes. Meanwhile, the official arrangement with Raiden would be declared. Azura approached him in the corridor before the public address. So, I hear you're actually going through with it. Raiden rubbed the back of his neck. You could say that, at least as a show of unity against Zentek, right? She gave a faint smirk. It won't be just a show if the law is invoked. It becomes binding. Are you sure you can handle being consort to three princesses? He laughed, though it sounded hollow in his own ears. Who could possibly handle that? The day of the formal address arrived. The royal courtyard, a vast open space ringed by statues of past queens, was filled with citizens. Rays of sunlight cascaded down through a translucent roof. Raiden stood off to the side, dressed in a black tunic embroidered with subtle gold lines. Palace tailors had insisted on something more refined than his usual mercenary attire. From a balcony overlooking the courtyard, Selena, Azura, and Freya stepped forward in full ceremonial regalia. Applause echoed through the chamber. A hush fell as Selena raised her hand to speak. Citizens of Asterion, we stand before you today in a time of crisis. Our world faces threat from a corporate power that seeks to erode our sovereignty. But we will not stand alone. My sisters and I remain united. To strengthen our monarchy and protect our people, we invoke the ancient tradition of shared royal consort. She gestured for Raiden. A subtle signal from one of the guards had him walk to the front. Whispers rustled through the crowd at the sight of an off-worlder. Azura took a step forward, her silver hair gleaming. This is Raiden. He risked his life to save us from assassins. He has chosen to stand with us, to protect Asterion from those who would destroy it. Freya glided up, her sapphire hair trailing like a soft cape. By the decree of Asterion's founding matriarchs, we present him as our consort. Though unconventional, this union secures the rights of all sisters under one vow, ensuring no division can weaken our lineage. Raiden stood there, heart pounding. The magnitude of what was happening finally hit him. Even if it was partly a political maneuver, he was effectively pledging himself to these three remarkable and occasionally terrifying women. An uproar of mixed reactions spread through the courtyard. Cheers, confusion, some outrage. The hall rang with voices. One moment, it felt like the entire kingdom might either collapse into protest or celebrate in relief. Suddenly, a thunderous explosion rocked the far end of the courtyard. Glass shards rained down as a projectile from outside smashed through a window. The crowd shrieked and scattered. Raiden jolted, instincts telling him to rush for the princesses. Guards swarmed the perimeter, weapons drawn. An amplified voice blared from some unseen vantage. Asterion, your monarchy is corrupt. Bow to Zentek or face annihilation. Without hesitation, Raiden signaled the princesses to get behind him. He unwrapped trident from where it had been strapped beneath his ceremonial cloak. The staff gleamed in the harsh light, ready for action. Within seconds, more projectiles fired from beyond the palace walls. Some kind of artillery. But the city's protective shield should have prevented an outright attack, unless Zentek had found a way to sabotage it. Raiden sprinted forward, scanning for vantage points. Guards returned fire, but the noise was overwhelming. Each impact shook the foundation, sending bystanders fleeing. Azura and Selena ducked behind a column, Freya trying to use her empathic sense to locate the attackers. They're using some dampening device, she said, wincing. I can't see them clearly. With a firm grip on trident, Raiden extended the staff toward a gaping hole in the courtyard wall. Focusing, he sent out a wave of energy that dispersed into the street beyond. For a moment, outlines of 5 or 6 heavily armed vehicles shimmered into view. Cloaked mechs of some sort. They have cloaking tech, Raiden growled. We can't let them bombard the palace, Azura hissed, glancing at her sisters. Selena, you have to override the city's shield from the inside. Selena nodded and darted away, leaving Raiden, Azura, and Freya to hold back the assault. Guards from the palace came pouring in, but the clamor was intense, and each mech unleashed streams of plasma. 2 guards were incinerated before Raiden managed to block a direct shot with Trident. He advanced step by step, deflecting blasts. Beside him, Azura braced a large pulse rifle against the column, returning fire with lethal precision. Freya closed her eyes, chanting softly, and a faint purple aura formed around the courtyard, protecting the panicked citizens from stray shots. Trident fed Raiden a constant flow of data, angles, power outputs, solutions. He braced the staff against the ground and released a shockwave that disrupted the mech's cloaking field. The vehicles flickered into full visibility, angular, spider-like constructs bristling with cannons. Roars of alarm spread among the palace defenders. But now that the mechs were visible, the soldiers could target them effectively. Missiles and energy bolts streaked across the courtyard in a frenzied exchange of fire. A mech pivoted, its main cannon aimed at Azura. Raiden hurled himself forward, pushing her out of the line of fire. The plasma bolts scorched the marble where she'd been standing. Azura recovered instantly, giving him a grudging nod of thanks, then unloaded a barrage from her pulse rifle into the mech's leg joints. Sparks flew. Meanwhile, Freya used her telepathic power to mentally stun one of the mech pilots, causing the vehicle to stagger. Do it now, she yelled at Raiden. He channeled every ounce of energy through Trident. The staff glowed so bright it was blinding. A focused beam tore through the mech's chassis, leaving it a smoking husk. Explosions rattled the courtyard as one mech went down, but the others continued firing. The entire airspace above the palace crackled with stray shots. Several statues crumbled, and the main fountain shattered, water gushing everywhere. Guards valiantly took positions, chipping away at the onslaught. At last, Selena's voice echoed over the palace comm system. Shield override engaged, restoring coverage now. A shimmering dome spread across the courtyard, absorbing the next volley of mech artillery. The invaders realized they were about to be trapped. With mechanical shrieks, they tried to retreat, scuttling back toward the outer perimeter, but the newly restored shield sealed them in. Azura smirked through ragged breaths. They're not getting away. Raiden watched as palace defenses reactivated. Automated turrets emerged from hidden compartments along the rooftop, unleashing torrents of laser fire on the remaining mechs. One by one, the monstrous machines collapsed under the combined might of the palace guard, the turrets, and the princess's unwavering stand. When the last mech fell silent, the courtyard was in ruins. Smoke drifted through broken arches. Civilians crouched behind toppled pillars, stunned but alive. Guards rushed to secure the perimeter. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm wailed. Selena rejoined them, face pale. Damage is extensive, but at least the monarchy stands. We need to bring this evidence to the council. They can't ignore Zintek's open aggression now. Freya, panting, rested against a broken statue. Raiden, are you all right? He glanced down at himself, noticing a series of scorch marks on his tunic, minor burns on his arms. Nothing lethal. I've been better, he managed. But I'm alive. Azura clapped him on the shoulder. You fought well. We owe you. Raiden's gaze swept over the 3 sisters. Despite the fear and adrenaline, something warm rippled through him. He realized he cared about their fate, about this kingdom he'd never intended to claim. Soon after, official statements were filed with the Interplanetary Council. Asterion's delegation, and now Raiden, included as consort, flew to the Grand Council Station in orbit around a neighboring star. The station was a colossal structure that housed representatives from 100 star systems. Sleek corridors connected massive assembly chambers. News of the mech attack had spread quickly, so tension ran high as the Asterion group arrived. Zentech's own delegates tried to downplay the incident, claiming Asterion had staged it. But holographic evidence, plus the wreckage of the mechs, contradicted that narrative. In a grand hall lined with floating discs where counselors observed from above, the princesses and Raiden stood before the dais. A stern council official, elongated and pale, tapped a staff against the floor to command silence. Princess Selena, Princess Azura, Princess Freya of Asterion, the official intoned. You stand before this council to accuse Zentech of orchestrating an unprovoked attack on your monarchy. Present your evidence. Selena stepped forward with a data crystal in hand, inserting it into the dais. Members of the council, we submit sensor data, recordings of transmissions, and captured remains of the assault vehicles. This was a deliberate strike. Murmurs rippled through the delegates. The official turned to the row where Zentech's representatives stood. How do you respond? A tall woman with cybernetic implants rose, her eyes replaced with silver lenses. These accusations are baseless. We suspect an internal rebellion staged by Asterion to gain sympathy. Raiden clenched a fist but held back, letting the sisters handle the initial debate. Freya's voice rose. Baseless? Here is the recorded communication from one of your field commanders, referencing direct orders from Zentech to eliminate the monarchy before we could finalize our consort arrangement. The council official examined the data. Then Azura added, furthermore, we have proof Zentech bribed certain local officials to undermine our shield system, allowing them to breach our perimeter. The Zentech representative began to sweat. Even if your monarchy is legitimate, Asterion is not stable. We have intelligence that these princesses are unwed, thus fracturing the monarchy in... Azura cut her off. The law of Asterion states that if one princess marries, the consort is shared among all unmarried sisters. We have fulfilled that tradition. There was a dramatic pause. Several counselors leaned forward. Raiden stepped forward now, resisting the urge to roll his eyes at the absurd formality. I am Raiden, recognized by Asterion as the consort. I can confirm the authenticity of these documents, and I can also confirm that I helped repel Zentech's incursion. A hush fell. Finally, the council official inclined his head. The monarchy stands united then. Zentech's representative opened her mouth to protest, but an avalanche of damning evidence glowed on the central display. A wave of condemnation spread among the counselors. Some demanded sanctions against Zentech. Others wanted an immediate cease and desist order on any further aggression. When the final tally came, the council officially acknowledged Asterion's monarchy and condemned Zentech's unauthorized military actions. The corporation's delegates were escorted out under scrutiny, pending further investigation. As the hearing adjourned, the princesses turned to Raiden. Selena's eyes shone with gratitude. Azura looked deeply relieved, though she tried to hide it. Freya reached for Raiden's hand and squeezed gently. They returned to Asterion as heroes. Crowds lined the streets to welcome them. Repairs on the damaged palace courtyard had already begun, funded by various new alliances the sisters had forged in the wake of Zentech's scandal. The monarchy's unity was recognized galaxy-wide, largely thanks to the shared consort, custom finally being fulfilled. Raiden felt an odd combination of pride and dread. He had never pictured himself settling down, let alone as consort to 3 princesses. Yet here he was, stepping out of the royal transport to cheers and banners bearing the Asterion crest. He caught sight of Selena gazing at him shyly, and Freya offering a bright smile, and Azura nodding in approval. Something inside him softened. He had found a place, at least for now, among them. In the weeks that followed, they prepared for the official wedding ceremony. It was to be a singular event, combining elements of all 3 princesses' preferences: a grand feast for Selena's diplomacy circle, a martial display for Azura's warrior tradition, and a musical, mystical performance for Freya's empathic roots. Raiden endured endless fittings, lessons in Asterion etiquette, and mock ceremonies to ensure he wouldn't make a fool of himself on the big day. Trident found it all endlessly amusing, chiming in with mental commentary every time Raiden tried to practice the complicated vow recitations. The wedding day dawned bright and warm, the palace bedecked in silver streamers and violet blossoms that captured the color of the sisters' familial hair tones. Citizens from all across Asterion and beyond came to witness the unprecedented union. Even dignitaries from other worlds arrived, curious about this man who had become consort to 3 princesses in one stroke. As the ceremony began, Raiden stood at the front of a vast hall, trying not to shift uncomfortably in his ceremonial robes. He'd never worn anything so ornate: gold thread, swirling designs, and a high collar that made him feel slightly strangled. Trident was peace-bonded at his side, wrapped in ribbons signifying loyalty to the crown. One by one, the princesses entered. Selena wore a sleek lavender gown that trailed behind her like a shimmer of dusk. Azura's attire blended armor and formal wear, shaped from dark metallic fabrics that sparkled as she walked. Freya was draped in midnight blue silk embroidered with star patterns that seemed to ripple when she moved. They stood around him in a half-circle, each holding a small ring wrought from Asterion's famed crystal ore. The high priest recited passages in an ancient tongue. The vow was unusual, but anchored in the principle that the consort, Raiden, would unite the sisters in purpose, ensuring the monarchy's continued strength. Freya placed her ring on Raiden's left hand, whispering, "I welcome you into my heart, for the good of Asterion and for the bond we share." Azura placed her ring on his right hand, voice firm, "I trust your blade at my side, for the defense of our realm." Selena placed hers just above Freya's ring, her voice wavering with emotion, "I offer you my gratitude and my faith that we shall protect each other and all our people." Finally, Raiden placed 3 slender bands, each shaped to fit the sisters' ring fingers, onto their hands, sealing the vow. The applause was thunderous. Raiden found himself unsteady on his feet, less from exhaustion than from the surreal feeling that overcame him. He had truly married 3 princesses at once. In the days that followed, the city erupted in celebration. Cultural performances, fireworks displays, banquets lined with the best Asterion delicacies. Raiden, no stranger to a rough life, was overwhelmed. He was officially prince consort, an alien role that demanded public appearances, symbolic gestures, and all manner of courtly responsibilities. He often found solace in the quiet corners of the palace, or on the balcony where he first spoke with Selena. Sometimes, Azura joined him there, exchanging a silent understanding about the weight of responsibility. Freya would appear, offering comedic relief, or simply leaning her head on his shoulder. Selena's presence was the calm in the storm, reassuring him that they were in this together. But not all was peaceful. In the back of Raiden's mind, and in the subtle mental murmurs from Trident, he sensed that Zentech's defeat was not the end. The corporation had lost a major battle, but they were too powerful to vanish overnight. Additionally, rumors whispered of a mysterious figure with a personal vendetta against Raiden himself, a figure rumored to have ties to hidden labs that specialized in advanced cybernetics. Late one evening, Raiden passed through a dark corridor where the flickering sconces cast strange shadows. Trident hummed in his mind, restless. Azura had just finished a sparring session with him and left for a bath. Freya was in the library studying some ancient scrolls, and Selena was occupied with a visiting delegation. He leaned against a wall, letting out a slow breath. For the first time in a very long while, he had a home of sorts. Yet that sense of belonging both soothed and terrified him. A faint voice broke the silence. "Raiden." He looked up to see the queen herself, Marathia, mother to the princesses, standing at the end of the corridor. She leaned on a cane, her once vibrant hair now a faded gray, but her violet eyes were fierce with intelligence. Raiden bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty." She approached, each step careful but resolute. "I want to meet you properly. My daughters speak of you with admiration, and with frustration too, I hear." He gave a faint laugh. "That sounds about right." She studied him for a moment, then said, "I know you never sought to be here, yet you have helped unite them. For that, I am grateful. You have saved our family from dissolution and Asterion from a dire threat. The intensity of her gaze made Raiden stand a bit straighter. I just did what I thought was right. Marathia nodded. That is precisely why you're here. I sense a bond in you, something more than a soldier's skill. Trident is an ancient artifact from a forgotten era, yes? He hesitated. Yes, we've been together for quite some time. The queen's expression turned knowing. Such relics choose their wielders carefully, and they do not remain in one place unless there is a significant destiny at play. I suspect the future will test you again. Raiden thought of Zen Tech, of rumored adversaries, and felt a cold twist in his stomach. I'm prepared. She smiled gently. I believe you are. But do not bear the burden alone, Prince Consort. With that, she turned and continued down the corridor, leaving him with more questions than answers. In the following weeks, the new equilibrium settled. The monarchy gained renewed respect in the region. Trade deals improved, the palace was repaired, and Raiden found himself sharing daily life with three women whose personalities were as different as the suns and moons of the galaxy. They argued sometimes, Azura demanding more combat training sessions, Freya telling him to slow down and let her heal his spiritual scars, Selena balancing official duties with sweet moments stolen in private. One evening, while Raiden and the sisters dined in a private chamber, Selena made a passing joke. You know, I overheard some of the court ladies gossiping that our arrangement is shocking. They say, Human, you can't just marry me. My sisters demand you take them too, as if it was some comedic scandal. Freya giggled into her wineglass. Well, they're not wrong. Is comedic? Azura snorted. You say comedic, I say practical. At least we have one focus point for any infiltration attempts. Raiden raised an eyebrow. Glad to be your single focus point. Selena's eyes sparkled mischievously, and for the briefest moment, the four of them just laughed, forgetting politics and burdens. But far beyond the glowing towers of Asterion, on a distant station orbiting a barren moon, a shadowy figure stared at a hollow screen displaying Raiden's face. Machinery whirred around him, half of his body wrapped in cybernetic augmentations. The man's lips curled into a sneer. So you found yourself a princely niche, Raiden, he muttered. I'll tear it all away from you soon enough. The camera panned over the remains of a Zentech insignia, half-shredded. Glowing eyes flickered with malice. Even as Asterion celebrated its new piece, a deeper threat loomed, one that would call Raiden and his princesses to fight again, together. For now, though, the kingdom basked in unity. Raiden stood on the same balcony where he once found solitude. Only this time, Selena, Azura, and Freya joined him, each sister wearing a relaxed smile. Soft starlight washed over the city. The hush of the night was a welcome respite. Freya leaned her head on Raiden's shoulder. Azura crossed her arms, gazing at the skyline with a thoughtful frown that hinted she was already planning improvements to the city's defenses. Selena slipped her hand into Raiden's, and he squeezed gently. He thought of how improbable it was. A wandering mercenary turned consort to three princesses, forging alliances in the face of corporate aggression, besting assassins and mechs, and standing now in a quiet moment of peace. But it felt right. We'll protect this place, he said softly. The sisters nodded as one. Yes, Selena whispered. We will. And though the future remained uncertain, Raiden finally sensed that he was no longer alone. The part of him that once believed he could only rely on himself had begun to heal, thanks to the trust these princesses placed in him, and the trust he was learning to place in them. Trident's faint voice echoed in his mind. See, you found a home worth fighting for. Raiden smiled at the star-filled sky, letting the sense of belonging wash over him. No matter what threats lurked beyond the horizon, he would face them with his new family, and perhaps that was the greatest victory of all. Commander Zirin stood at the forward console of the Kroth observation vessel Sharkali, gazing at the swirling blue orb far below. His forefingers drummed lightly against the polished surface as he zoomed in on an unassuming patch of land. Through the ship's advanced sensors, he saw clusters of rectangular buildings, roads teeming with ground vehicles, and tall spires that seemed to touch the clouds. He remembered the briefings. This planet was called Earth by its inhabitants, and its people called themselves humans. The first impressions had been a welter of contradictions. They had vast farmland, but also sprawling metropolises packed with inhabitants. They possessed nuclear weapons, but still launched primitive chemical rockets. Yet none of those contradictions had prepared him for what the research drones had captured next. A new feed appeared on the console, showing images of humans performing surgeries and medical procedures. Long metal instruments sliced into living flesh. Bundles of tubes were inserted into open wounds, and pungent liquids were pumped into writhing bodies. There were humans, adults, or perhaps elders, restrained on narrow platforms, arms and legs bound, faces contorted in pain. The medical staff wore protective garments, some with masks, goggles, or gloves, and seemed utterly unfazed by the raw violence of this process. From the vantage point of Kroth observational standards, it looked like ritualized torture. Zirin's pale eyes narrowed. He was accustomed to the Kroth method of quantum regeneration, which required little more than a focused energy pulse and gentle sedation. What these humans did to one another was barbaric, or so it seemed. Despite that, signs of care also flickered through the same feed. A nurse, face-weary, offering comforting words to a child lying on a bed. A doctor wiping sweat from her brow, tirelessly fighting to save a patient's life. Commander Zirin felt torn. He had never observed such conflicting evidence. Were these humans monstrous torturers or genuine healers? He had pored over countless transmissions from Earth's broadcast signals. He'd seen moments of compassion, relief efforts after natural disasters, philanthropic organizations feeding the hungry. And yet these same humans made bombs that could destroy entire cities, fought wars among themselves, and in these very facilities performed actions that resembled, to the Kroth eye, extreme cruelty. He sighed, recollecting the instructions from the Kroth High Council. Their civilization had studied thousands of sentient species and prided itself on enforcing an interstellar code, the preservation of life accords. Any species that tortured its own, if discovered beyond doubt, would be subject to Kroth intervention. They were obligated to act. Zirin's mission was to gather sufficient data, then present a recommendation to the Council. If the Council deemed humans to be systematically violating the Accords, military intervention would follow. The door behind him slid open with a gentle hiss, revealing scientist Rival, the lead xenobiologist on mission. Rival's silver irises flickered with concern. "Commander," she said in a hushed tone, "I've analyzed more of their transmissions, focusing on how they describe these so-called hospitals. The term heal appears repeatedly, as well as references to medical ethics." Rival paused, aware that contradicting the commander's interpretation carried some risk. Yet the footage shows painful procedures, incisions, forced fluid exchange. It's unlike any healing practice we know. Zirin pointed at the main console. "I see sedation in some cases, but not always. Restraints, cutting tools, machines that force air in and out of lungs. It looks more like abuse than therapy." Scientist Rival exhaled slowly. "I know how it looks. Our kind regenerates tissue painlessly, but the humans appear to rely on invasive methods. I worry we might be misreading their cultural context. If these are the means they must use to save lives, the appearance alone could deceive us." Zirin frowned. "We have additional evidence, do we not? Humans continually wage wars across the planet. Their borders shift with each conflict. They manufacture advanced weapons and also produce chemical toxins for recreation. They seem to relish activities that involve deliberate harm. Perhaps these hospitals are some twisted extension of their cruelty." Rival looked down at the console. "Commander, I advise caution before making a final judgment. It's possible that what we perceive as torture is necessity. Their biology differs from ours." Zirin's expression hardened. "We'll complete the data analysis. Then I'll transmit findings to the High Council." He swept a hand across the console, bringing up videos from war zones, images of battered civilians carried into operating rooms. Let them see the contradictory nature of these humans. They injure each other, then cut each other open, presumably to fix those injuries. It's barbaric. The High Council's decision arrived within a planetary rotation. They were disturbed by the visuals Zirin had sent, especially the footage of a child screaming while doctors inserted in 4-line, an image that had shaken many Croth, given their aversion to invasive medical procedures. The Council's message was unequivocal. Humans appear to be systematically torturing their own kind under the guise of medicine. The Croth must intervene to protect these unsuspecting victims. Admiral Othrax, commander of the Expeditionary Fleet, was already prepared for action. The Council's orders gave him all the authority he needed. Aboard the flagship Carlon, Admiral Othrax paced the length of the command bridge, scanning the new intelligence from Earth. He'd led countless liberation efforts before, stepping into conflicts where local species brutalized each other. Though well-intentioned, these interventions had often ended with the Croth imposing severe restrictions on the offending civilization. Othrax had never hesitated to employ the advanced neutralization beams, rendering entire planetary militaries helpless in hours. But this was the first time he'd seen a species using hospitals for prolonged agony under the pretext of healing. The images revolted him. He was determined to end this practice. He summoned his officers. They gathered around a floating holographic display depicting Earth's major landmasses. Our scans show thousands of these so-called medical facilities. Othrax began, pointing to glowing red markers scattered across every continent. Our standard approach. We deploy non-lethal suppression fields to disable electronics, sedation pulses to immobilize the staff, and forcibly shut down all these torture centers. Then we separate victims from perpetrators, offering them immediate quantum regeneration. Lieutenant Kareen, a rising star in the Croth military hierarchy, nodded. A swift strike across the globe, coordinated so that we disable their defenses instantly. By the time they realize what's happening, we'll have seized every hospital. We'll save millions from further torment. A slight tremor crossed Rival's voice as she interjected, having been summoned to the bridge by Commander Zirin at the last minute. Admiral, are we sure about the identification of these facilities? The data suggests something more complex than organized torture. I fear we may cause catastrophic harm if we misunderstand their practices. Othrax gave her a measured look. Your concerns are noted, scientist. The Council has ruled. Unless you have irrefutable proof that these incisions and forced chemical injections are beneficial, we must proceed. Rival lowered her gaze, unconvinced but outnumbered. 2 more planetary rotations passed. The Croth fleet maneuvered into position, concealed behind Earth's moon and darkening their energy signatures to evade detection by Earth's relatively primitive satellites. The humans had significant militaries, nuclear arsenals, fighter jets, missiles, but Othrax was confident that the Croth's cloaking devices and advanced weaponry would outmatch them. At precisely 0300 Earth-coordinated time, the massive Croth vessels descended into the atmosphere, stealth fields dropping, neutralization beams primed. Across the planet, watchers on the ground witnessed an astonishing spectacle. Hundreds of black, triangular ships materializing against the night sky, flickering in the moonlight like shards of obsidian. At Boston General Hospital, Dr. Sarachan was explaining treatment options to a leukemia patient. It was after midnight, and the ward was quiet except for the hum of monitoring devices. Suddenly, the lights flickered. The digital screens displaying vital signs froze and then went dark. Dr. Chen's eyes widened as the entire electrical system surged and died. Emergency generators kicked in, but only for a moment. Then came a wave of purple glow, shimmering through the walls as if they weren't there at all. People collapsed, nurses in mid-step, patients in their beds, doctors leaning over operating tables. Dr. Chun felt her limbs turn to lead. She struggled to remain conscious. The last thing she saw was the hallway lights going out, leaving a spectral violet sheen. Similar scenes played out worldwide. In a children's hospital in Tokyo, in a maternity ward in Cairo, in an ICU in Sao Paulo, An otherworldly radiance swept through the halls, knocking out people and technology alike. Ambulances ground to a halt on darkened streets. Medevac helicopters dropped from the sky. Life support machines cut off abruptly. The Croth weaponry, though designed as humane, had no provisions for the delicate complexities of Earth's hospital patients who depended on continuous mechanical intervention to survive. People with open incisions on operating tables no longer received the sedation or monitoring they needed. Heart-lung machines froze. Oxygen supplies ceased. The death toll started climbing within minutes. From the vantage point of the Croth fleet, the operation looked flawlessly executed. Admiral Othrax monitored a live feed of neutralization beams lancing down from dozens of capital ships. The beams shimmered over targeted structures, leaving them powerless, bathed in that distinctive violet light. Meanwhile, ground squads of Croth troopers teleported into the largest hospitals, expecting to find caged prisoners and sadistic tormentors. Instead, they met scenes of chaos. Staff members unconscious or desperately trying to tend to suddenly failing equipment, patients in dire distress, and families huddled in corridors. Commander Zirin was in one such ground squad, stepping into the top floor of a large hospital in Paris. At first glance, he saw motionless humans lying everywhere. His mind reeled. Had they arrived too late to save these so-called victims? Some patients were still conscious, their eyes wide with terror. One woman clutched at Zirin's uniform, gasping in French words he did not understand. Her child lay limp on a wheeled bed beside her, an intravenous line trailing from the child's arm. Zirin froze, uncertain what to do. The child's vitals were crashing. He recognized that the intravenous line was connected to a solution bag, a method of delivering fluids. Rival's warnings about invasive procedures crossed his mind. Could this be the crucial technology that actually saved lives? Downstairs, Croth troopers forcibly unplugged more equipment, believing it to be instruments of torture. A surgeon tried to explain that the machine they were turning off was a ventilator for a newborn. In the confusion, the trooper's universal translator picked up only scattered phrases. The surgeon's pleas went unheeded. Moments later, the child's heart monitor flatlined. The mother's wail echoed through the halls, unearthly in its despair. Scientist Rival, who had joined an insertion team in London, witnessed a similarly horrifying scene. Rows of unconscious patients, surgeons collapsed mid-procedure, life support systems blinking offline. Rival realized with a jolt of dread that the sedation pulses the Croth had deployed were pushing humans into comas from which some might never awake without immediate intervention. She tapped frantically on her handheld communicator, trying to reach Admiral Othrax. Before she could speak, the overhead lighting flickered and died, replaced by dull emergency lamps. She watched in dismay as a nurse, partially revived, dragged herself to a trolley of supplies, rummaging for something to restart a patient's heart. Rival's own innate sense of compassion warred with her duty. She stooped, removing a portable energy cell from her gear. If she could just power that defibrillator. But the translator beeped with an incoming directive from Admiral Othrax. All ground units are to secure the buildings and free the victims from their restraints. Rival's heart pounded. This was no liberation. This was the worst fiasco she had ever witnessed. She switched to an encrypted channel, calling Zirin. We have to stop this. The humans aren't torturers. These devices are saving lives. The intrusion into Earth's medical facilities lasted barely an hour. Yet in that hour, irreparable damage was done. Tens of thousands of patients, from fragile newborns in NICUs to individuals on artificial hearts, died because their equipment failed. The confusion among staff, the sedation pulses, and the abrupt power loss combined to sow catastrophe. On the ground, some pockets of Earth's security forces scrambled to respond, but found their vehicles and radios disabled. Politicians and generals across the globe received half-coherent reports of an alien invasion focused on hospitals. At first, no one could believe it. Why would an advanced extraterrestrial species target places of healing? Then came the horrifying realization. The aliens must want to destroy human capacity for health and resilience. They must be trying to break humanity's will by attacking the helpless. In the Pentagon's Underground Command Center, President Marcus Reynolds conferred with top military brass. The reports were grim. Thousands dead in hospital wards, operating rooms turned into morgues, entire clinics paralyzed. General Quan read the figures out with a tone of fury. They've killed children, the terminally ill, pregnant women. This is beyond barbaric. We have to respond, Mr. President. Vice President Harper, pale-faced, stared at a live satellite feed. We don't even know the extent of their capabilities. If they can shut down our systems so easily, what chance do we have? President Reynolds slammed a fist on the table. We have no choice. We stand by and do nothing. We accept they can murder our most vulnerable at will. He turned to Defense Secretary Alston. Activate every advanced protocol we've got. No more secrets. I want Project Angel in the air. The room went silent. Project Angel, officially shelved for being too extreme, was a multinational initiative to develop near-futuristic weaponry incorporating quantum field manipulation, gravitic displacement drives, and integrated neural interfaces for pilots. It was the stuff of conspiracy theories, rumored to be a step away from the realm of science fiction. Activating it meant unveiling humanity's darkest potential. But no one doubted the necessity now. If an alien force could slaughter innocent patients in their beds, then the gloves were off. Within minutes, bunkers hidden across the world came alive. Hangar doors that had been disguised as hillsides or farmland slid open, revealing sleek, black aircraft that shimmered with an eerie distortion effect. Engineers sprinted across catwalks, tearing away protective coverings from half-assembled weapon systems. Scientists in crisp uniforms tapped lines of code into quantum stabilizers. Pilots underwent last-minute medical checks, hooking neural implants into the specialized helmets that would allow them to link with the ships. Major Layla Pierce stood on a raised platform in one of these secret bases. She was tall, with cropped black hair and a face carved by years of rigorous service. Her eyes reflected both anger and sorrow. She had lost a nephew that very hour, a 6-year-old boy who had been under anesthesia when the power cut. The operating team hadn't been able to revive him in time. As she listened to the details of the invasion, a cold fury settled into her bones. This was no ordinary mission. She would be leading the first wave of the so-called Angels of Death, stealth fighters that combined advanced weaponry with bleeding-edge cloaking systems. She stepped toward her craft, a black triangular fighter with stylized white wings painted on the underside, ironically reminiscent of angels. The name stenciled along the fuselage read Mercy's Fury. Pierce keyed in her pilot ID, and the cockpit slid open. Inside, the seat integrated with the neural harness. She settled in, feeling the spike of data feed as her mind connected to the onboard systems. That surge of raw input almost overwhelmed her. She gritted her teeth, harnessed it, felt the engine hum and resonate with her heart's own rhythm. In command centers across Earth, one question dominated every conversation. Why had the aliens done this? The best guess was that the invaders considered Earth's medical facilities to be strategic targets, akin to disabling the ability to repair wounded soldiers in war. But as more satellite images poured in, confusion only grew. The aliens had not bombed the hospitals into rubble. They had used what looked like precision energy to disable them, stepping inside as if to rescue the patients. Such an action made no sense if the objective was pure conquest. General Quan coordinated with President Reynolds and allied leaders through a global crisis call. Every major power, China, Russia, the EU, India, the United States, agreed to pool resources, share advanced prototypes, and launch a single, unified counterattack. Even countries historically hostile to each other found themselves cooperating in the face of this horrific assault. Meanwhile, Admiral Othrax received Reval's urgent message. He stood in the bridge of the Carlon, flames of doubt flickering across his reptilian visage. Reval's voice trembled. "Admiral, these places are for healing. The humans use invasive surgery, because they lack quantum regeneration. The chemicals we saw them injecting are medicines, not poisons. We have effectively murdered countless innocent beings. He clutched the edges of a glowing console. Impossible. The council analyzed the data. The incisions, the restraining of conscious patients. It's because the patients would die otherwise, Reval shouted, uncharacteristically fervent. They're not tormentors. They're doctors. Her words sank in, spurring Othrax into frantic action. He ordered an immediate cessation of the sedation pulses and neutralization beams. All ground forces were told to stand down. But the damage was done. Around the globe, Earth's healers lay stricken, their patients far beyond help. The Crotha's attempts to communicate with Earth's leadership went unanswered. Human channels were ablaze with calls for vengeance. In certain corners of Earth's social media, a single phrase gained terrifying popularity. They attacked our healers. So now we send the angels of death. Admiral Othrax, scanning intercepted transmissions, realized this was no idle threat. Something big was coming. Lieutenant Kareen studied sensor readings that indicated multiple high-energy surges from underground locations around the planet. Admiral, the humans are powering up devices we haven't seen in any of their public data. Massive quantum spikes. Particle accelerators, perhaps. They're preparing to engage us on a scale we didn't anticipate. Othrax recalled the earlier intelligence that had labeled humanity as technologically behind. Clearly, that data was flawed. Raise shields. All ships are to ascend above their atmosphere and regroup. We'll attempt peaceful contact from orbit, away from their direct line of fire. They began withdrawal maneuvers, but it was too late. The first wave of Earth's air response erupted across the skies. Major Layla Pierce led a formation of 10 stealth fighters, each one ghosting on Croth scanners. She locked onto the nearest Croth vessel rising through the cloud layer, unleashing a quantum disruption missile. On her neural visor, the readouts showed the Croth craft's shield flashing a brilliant emerald, then collapsing. A second projectile from her wingman slammed into the vessel's hull. The explosion was immediate. Pieces of alien metal rained down on farmland below. Pierce felt a grim satisfaction. This was for her nephew, for all the children who lost their lives on operating tables in the dark. Across the Atlantic, other Earth squadrons, some using advanced drone swarms, hammered at Croth's ships attempting to retreat. The Croth had never encountered such rapid adaptation. Humanity, as they now realized, had a hidden stockpile of advanced prototypes. Within half an hour, 8 Croth cruisers were destroyed or heavily damaged. Admiral Othrax ordered every vessel to engage stealth mode, but Earth's forces had discovered ways to track them, perhaps by gravitational anomalies or faint energy residues. The carefully orchestrated Croth retreat turned into a frantic scramble. Commander Zirin, still on the ground in Paris, tried to gather his squad for emergency teleportation to the Shark Alley. As he sprinted through the hospital's ruined corridors, he saw a child lying on the floor, still alive, gasping for breath. Zirin hesitated, torn between self-preservation and the pang of guilt that spiked through him. "I came here to save them," he mumbled, kneeling down. He pressed a small Croth medical emitter to the child's chest, hoping the quantum wave would at least stabilize the damage. The boy's eyes fluttered, then closed in a calmer breath. Zirin exhaled in relief. Perhaps that single gesture might atone for a fraction of the devastation unleashed. But in the next instant, the building shook. A flight of Earth jets roared past, and part of the structure collapsed. Zirin jumped aside, nearly dropping his emitter. One of his troopers waved frantically. "Commander, the teleport window is closing. We have to leave." They scrambled onto a small rooftop platform, and a purple glow enveloped them as the Shark Alley locked onto their transponders. The last sight Zirin had of Earth was the devastated hospital courtyard below. In the orbit above, the Carlon faced a far more formidable threat. Human forces had launched Project Angel's spaceborne component, a large, ring-shaped accelerator cannon fitted onto a repurposed orbital station. Othrax stared in disbelief at the readings. The The station was charging up an energy signature reminiscent of a miniature black hole generator. "That can't be possible," he murmured, scanning lines of data. We believed that was beyond them. Yet it was happening, and the station's aim shifted with unerring precision, targeting the nearest Croth warships. A brilliant beam cut across the darkness of space, shearing straight through the flagship Tovimau, leaving behind a swirling vortex of compressed matter. The vessel imploded, vanishing in a silent flash. Croth officers on the Carlon reeled as the sensor feed showed half a dozen more warships falling in rapid succession, battered by Earth's smaller strike craft or hammered by the monstrous orbital weapon. This was no random lashing out. It was systematic eradication. Panicking, Admiral Othrax broadcast a universal signal on all known frequencies. "Humans, cease fire. We misunderstood your facilities. We believed they were places of torture. We only sought to help what we perceived as victims. We beg you to stand down." But the only reply was the haunting hush of unresponsive channels. Othrax's second-in-command, Bryn, turned from the console. "They aren't listening, Admiral. Their transmissions are saturated with calls for retribution. They're using your own words about saving the vulnerable, but twisted into a vow of vengeance." He could hardly protest. What argument could he muster? That their misguided mercy had only killed tens of thousands? The Croth themselves were well aware that moral intent did little to mitigate catastrophic harm. Othrax barked a command. "All ships, activate total retreat. Jump to slipspace as soon as possible." Slipspace required a few minutes of spool-up time in normal conditions. Under the current assault, it was nearly impossible. Earth's fighters swarmed around the remaining Croth vessels like hornets, stinging them from every angle. On the ground, pockets of Earth's militaries had advanced portable railguns and directed energy launchers. The Croth found themselves pinned. Some tried to accelerate into orbit, only to be shot down by Project Angel squadrons. Others tried to remain in high atmosphere, but ground-based missile salvos hammered them mercilessly. In less than an hour, the once proud expeditionary fleet lay in ruins, drifting in Earth's upper airspace or crashing on remote hillsides. Aboard the Shar-Kali, Commander Zurin, Reval, and a handful of troopers huddled in shocked silence. The flagship Carlon was among the few vessels still intact, but it was under heavy fire. Reval's voice was hushed. "Commander, we did this. We unleashed everything upon them. It's no wonder they're so united in their response. Nobody can stand idle when their healers are attacked." Zirin looked at the status monitors. "The Carlon is about to attempt a slipspace jump. If it fails, Earth's new weapon will destroy them. Shar-Kali has enough power for a short-range jump to meet them. We might still get out of this system alive." The pilots struggled to hold the craft steady as Earth's countermeasures hammered their shields. Reval stared through a viewport, seeing the arcs of lethal purple beams shooting upward from Earth's surface, ironically resembling the color of the Croth's sedation technology. She remembered the triumphant day she'd been assigned to this mission, believing wholeheartedly that the Croth were bringing the light of civilization to a savage planet. Now she wondered if the Croth were the real savages here. Within minutes, the Carlon signaled all surviving Croth ships, "Jump now or perish." Some vessels no longer had functional slipspace drives. Their crews faced the grim reality of capture or annihilation. A few, such as the Shar-Kali, executed the emergency maneuver. A swirling rift opened in space, and they plunged into it, vanishing from Earth's skies. In the confusion, they failed to notice the infiltration of Earth's hacking signals, gleaning the Croth's star maps and command codes. By the time they realized the breach, it was far too late. On Earth, the last Croth cruiser disintegrated in a ball of white-hot debris, marking the end of the immediate invasion. The toll on hospitals was incalculable. Millions across the planet reeled in the aftermath, mourning the abrupt loss of loved ones who had been so close to healing. The global news cycle, once rife with political squabbles, now echoed a single cry for accountability. President Reynolds addressed the nation and the world from the very hospital where he had lost his own father to a severed ventilator line. Behind him stood doctors and nurses, their faces drawn with exhaustion and heartbreak. His words were broadcast in dozens of languages. They came under false pretenses of liberation. They attacked our most vulnerable, those dedicated to preserving life. In doing so, they committed the greatest violation of our moral code. We responded with the full measure of our technology, revealing secrets we swore never to use. So let this stand as a warning. If any force dares harm our healers again, we will show no restraint. In an underground base in Colorado, Major Layla Pierce stepped out of her battered stealth fighter. Her flight suit was drenched in sweat, her limbs aching from the extended neural link. The firefight had been shorter than expected, but more intense than any simulation. As she removed the neural harness, she thought of the child in the operating room, of the anger that had driven her to pull the trigger. The mission had succeeded far beyond the general's hopes. But was victory the right word for such a bloodbath? She made her way to an improvised memorial set up in a side corridor. There were pictures of patients lost, doctors who died when the sedation pulses hit mid-surgery, a nurse who'd been intubating a burn victim when the machines failed. Candles flickered alongside photographs. Pierce sank to one knee. "We got them," she whispered. "But none of this brings you back." Across the planet, an eerily united Earth set about the grim work of rebuilding their medical infrastructure. Emergency crews rigged generators in the rubble, volunteers lined up to donate blood, and doctors who could still stand performed triage on the survivors. Funds poured in internationally to support hospitals in poorer regions. For the first time in human history, geopolitical disputes faded into the background. The entire species had found a common cause, ensuring they would never again be so vulnerable. Days later, the battered Kroth starship Shar-Kali dropped out of slipspace near the capital world of Kroth Prime. Its hull was scarred with plasma burns, entire decks depressurized. Admiral Othrax had survived, though half his limbs were in splints. Commander Zurin, scientist Rival, and a small complement of troopers had made it through the jump, but their eyes were shadowed with shame. They had to explain to the High Council how they had attacked hospitals, of all things, and provoked an apocalyptic response. The council gathered in a great amphitheater ringed by floating platforms that represented each of the Kroth's major authorities. Over 12,000 Kroth had been stationed in the expeditionary fleet, and fewer than 1,000 returned. As Othrax recounted their misunderstanding of human medical procedures, the council members exchanged looks of horror. When Rival stepped forward, her voice trembled with genuine remorse. She described how Earth's doctors were valiantly trying to save lives, not torture them, and how the Kroth liberation had done untold damage. Finally, Commander Zirin delivered the final blow. Earth had discovered the coordinates of Kroth Prime, gleaning them from the infiltration. The humans were likely more advanced than they had let on. If the humans chose to retaliate, the Kroth homeworld might be at risk. The council erupted in debate. Some demanded an immediate diplomatic envoy, even groveling if necessary. Others advocated building an even larger fleet, though they admitted the resource drain would be monumental. The reality was plain. They had struck first at the sanctuaries of Earth's healers, and Earth had responded with merciless fury. To risk a second conflict was to risk annihilation. Days turned into weeks as the Kroth scrambled to parse the shock. Rival watched bureaucrats and militarists scramble to shift blame, to write disclaimers, to call it an intelligence failure. She knew it was more than that, a failure of empathy, a refusal to see beyond their own methods. And now they all lived with the consequences. On Earth, teams combed through the wreckage of downed Kroth ships. Reverse engineering efforts began, with scientists salivating over the possibility of gleaning quantum regeneration. The memory of the invasion, the heartbreak it caused, fueled intense debate on ethics. If Earth harnessed these alien technologies, would they become the same kind of meddlers the Kroth were? For the moment, vengeance overshadowed caution. So many unanswered questions swirled, but one truth anchored them all. No planet would ever again dare assault Earth's hospitals without paying a terrible price. Eventually, Earth's fledgling United Global Defense Command broadcast a message on all cosmic frequencies, encrypted or not, to ensure the Croth would hear it. The voice belonged to President Reynolds. "We have identified your home world, and we hold no desire to exterminate your people. But know this, if a single Croth vessel approaches our system without our invitation, we will consider it an act of war, and we will send the angels of death again. You have witnessed what that means." In her bunk on a newly established orbital station, Major Layla Pierce read the transcript of that message. She felt no triumph, only a heavy resignation. "We used to be dreamers," she whispered to herself, "traveling to Mars, exploring the stars. Now we're warriors, because they forced our hand." She turned off the tablet and stared at her reflection in the small porthole. In the reflection, she saw the lines of exhaustion on her face. Yet there was also a faint gleam of resolve. The cost had been monstrous, but humanity's will to protect its healers burned brighter than ever. And far across the cosmic void, the High Council of Croth had no choice but to acknowledge their own grave failing. Their official records were revised to include a new classification for Earth, a civilization that might appear divided or primitive at a glance, but which had revealed staggering powers of innovation and unity under extreme provocation. Whenever the Council or any other starfaring race considered interfering with Earth again, they would find a stark cautionary note. They attacked Earth's healers, and Earth sent the angels of death. Let all who come after beware. The story of humanity's vengeance would echo through the annals of Croth lore, a grim reminder that even the best intentions, if guided by arrogance and ignorance, can trigger cataclysm. The final lines of the Council's updated data packet read like an epitaph to the hubris of the Croth. "We believed ourselves the guardians of life. We intervened in what we misunderstood, blinded by our own assumptions. In attacking those who save life, we awoke a force that defends its healers with a fury we never anticipated. May no future starfaring race forget this lesson, for Earth has proven that compassion, once threatened, can transform into the most devastating wrath the galaxy has seen." And so humanity turned its grief into steel, forging new alliances, accelerating research, and consolidating a once fragmented world. The battered hospital wards were rebuilt with advanced shielding, powered by new energy sources gleaned from alien wreckage. Surgeons continued their work, though some found themselves haunted by the memory of that night, when the lights dimmed and their patients slipped away. However, the new generation of doctors carried the burden of that tragedy with solemn pride. They were the reason humanity had become unstoppable, the reason entire fleets now trembled at the thought of targeting Earth. The Croth were left to wrestle with their shame, uncertain whether Earth would seek revenge beyond the broadcast threat. For months, the Shar-Kali orbited Croth Prime, its survivors dealing with personal guilt. Commander Zirin locked himself away, replaying the moment he saw the Paris hospital child, realizing too late that he was complicit in murder. Reval resigned from military service and published a scathing treatise on the fiasco, condemning the cultural arrogance that led them to misread basic human biology. Admiral Othrax, stripped of his rank, awaited a tribunal that would certainly hold him accountable for launching the strike without verifying Reval's analysis. The Council itself was paralyzed by fear of Earth's retribution, reinforcing orbital defenses around Croth Prime. But that retribution never came. Earth had no appetite for conquest. Their stance was purely defensive and absolute. So long as no Croth ship appeared unbidden in their skies, Earth was content to leave them be. Reports filtered in from scattered outposts where certain unscrupulous civilizations considered raiding Earth's recovered Croth technology. Yet rumors of Earth's unstoppable angels caused them to think twice. The name had become legend, a species that, though not as advanced overall, responded to harm against their healers with unprecedented ferocity. In backwater starports across the galaxy, the phrase "you do not harm a human doctor" became a piece of conventional wisdom, repeated in hushed voices. Interstellar travelers who had never set foot near Earth exchanged stories of the colossal station that could rip warships apart, of stealth fighters that struck unseen. Over time, the story grew beyond Earth's actual capabilities, turning the humans into near-mythic avengers. On Earth, daily life settled into a strange new normal. The ocean still rose with the tides, the sun still set behind the horizon, and families went about their routines. But hospitals received top priority in reconstruction budgets. Medi-drones proliferated, ensuring that never again would a patient be left vulnerable. School children recited a short creed at the beginning of each day, reminding them of the invasion night. Some called it the night of the angel's descent, to reaffirm humanity's vow: protect the weak, especially those who protect others. And in the quiet aftermath, an unexpected wave of scientific breakthroughs began. The partial integration of Croft medical technology revealed possibilities for improved Earth medicine. Reval had been correct about one thing. The Croft could regenerate injuries in ways that humans found miraculous. Even though the official channel between Earth and Croft was severed, a handful of stolen data drives led Earth's brightest minds closer to bridging the gap between invasive surgery and painless healing. In a twist of irony, the incompetent invasion that had destroyed so many lives now laid the groundwork for a revolution in saving future ones. Yet no one forgot the price. There were monuments dedicated to the victims, doctors found slumped over operating tables, nurses who died mid-evacuation, paramedics whose ambulances were thrown into chaos. The epitaph on the largest memorial in Geneva read, "To those who gave their all so that others might live, you are the reason we stood together. They attacked Earth's healers, so we sent the angels of death." That memorial became a place of pilgrimage. Survivors and loved ones placed flowers there daily. Pilots from the angel squadrons sometimes visited, uneasy about the role they had played. Some found solace in the knowledge they had avenged the fallen. Others found it a heavy weight on their conscience, that redemption should come from understanding, not from more death. But the events could not be undone. Perhaps someday a more enlightened approach would emerge. But for now, Earth had discovered the necessity of harsh deterrence. If the Croft ever debated a second intervention, that debate ended the moment they realized Earth's hidden capacity for war might have been only partially revealed. Scientists of the Croft, rummaging through the expedition's partial logs, uncovered references to advanced human projects, coding them as in development. They trembled at the notion that Earth's full potential might dwarf the nightmarish force they had already witnessed. In quiet corners of Croft Prime's academic halls, a new discipline arose: Terran Studies. A generation of Croft scholars analyzed human art, human science, and especially the event they dubbed the Great Hospital Tragedy. The conclusion was almost universal. The Croft must learn humility, for they had misunderstood an entire species at the most fundamental level. Gradually, a rumor spread that Earth might soon exceed the Croft in overall technology. If that happened, would Earth hold the same vow never to conquer? Or would rage flare again? The Croft had no answers. The galaxy turned star by star, system by system. Earth remained quiet, focusing on internal consolidation, healing the scars left behind. Their scientists channeled the universal outrage into breakthroughs, ironically inspired by the same race that had nearly eradicated thousands of hospital patients. Meanwhile, the Croft High Council hammered out new guidelines for future interventions. Always confirm local definitions of torture and medical care with absolute certainty. The new protocols were codified in memory of the humans they had unwittingly killed. Time slipped away, carrying the collective memory of that catastrophic assault into the realm of cautionary tales. On Earth, entire documentaries detailed how, in the darkest hour, warring nations united overnight. Humanity recognized its own capacity for swift, unstoppable retribution and, in that recognition, found a rare brand of unity. They were not proud of how many ships they had destroyed, how many alien lives they had ended, but they were resolute in having defended the fundamental sanctity of healing. No longer would Earth appear to the galaxy as fractured nations forever bickering. The Croth had forced them to reveal what lay dormant beneath their conflicts, an ironclad protection of those who saved lives. And so, centuries might pass, but the words would remain inscribed in the annals of cosmic history. They attacked Earth's healers, so we sent the angels of death. And if any other starfaring race dared repeat the Croth's mistake, they would discover for themselves that Earth's vengeance, once roused, was unstoppable. The cost in innocent blood had been monumental. The rage and sorrow that followed became the crucible forging Earth's unstoppable defense. Thus ended the tale of how a single tragic misunderstanding ignited the flame of unity across an entire planet and sealed the fate of an arrogant alien empire that had sought to save the very ones who needed no saving.